There's a peculiar loneliness that comes with waking up. And I don't mean waking up in the morning from a good night's sleep. I mean waking up in the deeper sense. Waking up to the illusions that most people are still dreaming. Waking up to the games that everyone is playing without realizing they're games. Waking up to the reality behind the curtain while everyone else is still captivated by the show. And here's what nobody tells you about this awakening, this shift in perception that we're all supposedly seeking. It can be isolating as hell, because suddenly you're seeing things that others don't see, questioning things that others don't question, and the conversations that used to feel normal now feel like you're speaking a different language. You walk into a room full of people discussing their problems, their plans, their dramas, and you can see it all so clearly, the patterns, the ego games, the stories they're telling themselves, and you don't know whether to say something or stay silent. You don't know whether you're going crazy or everyone else is. You don't know if you found truth or just a different kind of delusion. And so you stand there, awake in a sleeping world, wondering if this awakening was a gift or a curse. Have you felt this? That strange sensation of being simultaneously more connected to everything and more alone than you've ever been? Blends. Let me tell you about a man named Thomas. Thomas had what many would call a spiritual awakening about 3 years ago. It wasn't dramatic. No white lights, no visions, no mystical experiences. It was more like a veil lifting. He'd been meditating for years, reading the books, doing the practices, and then one day something just clicked. He saw through the story of himself. He recognized that most of what he'd been worrying about were just thoughts, just mental constructs. He saw how people around him were suffering, not because of their circumstances, but because of their relationship to their circumstances. He saw the ego everywhere, in himself, in others, in the entire structure of society. This constant grasping, comparing, defending, seeking. And at first it was exhilarating. He felt free. He felt like he'd discovered the secret that everyone was looking for. He couldn't wait to share it, to help others see what he was seeing. But then something unexpected happened. The more awake he became, the more alone he felt. His friends still wanted to talk about the same things they'd always talked about: sports, gossip, who said what to whom, their latest purchase, their career, anxieties, and Thomas would sit there trying to engage, trying to care, but it all felt so hollow, so trivial, not because there's anything wrong with sports or careers, but because he could see the suffering underneath it all, the endless seeking, the identity construction, the fear masquerading as ambition, and he didn't know what to do with that seeing. This is the thing about awakening that the spiritual books don't really prepare you for. They tell you about the bliss, the freedom, the peace, the oneness with everything. And yes, those things are real, but they don't tell you about the gap that opens up between you and the world you used to know. They don't tell you that you might lose friends, not because you want to, but because you simply don't fit into the same conversations anymore. They don't tell you that your family might think you've joined a cult or had a breakdown. They don't tell you that the corporate job that used to feel normal might suddenly feel absurd, like watching adults play an elaborate game of pretend and taking it deadly seriously. They don't tell you that you might find yourself at a dinner party, surrounded by people, feeling more isolated than if you were alone. Because you are alone, in a sense, alone in your seeing. Alone in your recognition of what's real and what's theater. And you can't unsee it. You can't go back to sleep just because sleep is more comfortable. The dream has been penetrated, and now you're awake in the middle of it, watching everyone else sleep. And here's where it gets really tricky. You start to question your own awakening. Because if awakening is supposed to bring peace and connection, why do you feel so disconnected? If you've supposedly seen through the ego, why do you still feel separate, maybe even more separate than before? If you've realized oneness, why does everyone feel so far away? And this is a crucial point, a place where many people get stuck. They wake up just enough to see the illusions, but not enough to see through the illusion of the awakened self. They become spiritually awakened people who now have a new identity to defend, the identity of being awake. And this identity, just like any other identity, creates separation. Now, instead of I'm successful or I'm smart, it's I'm awakened. And everyone else, they're asleep, they're unconscious. They don't get it. And there you are, more alone than ever, because you've just created a new prison made of spiritual superiority. You've replaced one dream with another. The ego hasn't dissolved. It's just put on robes and started speaking in mystical terms. And this is perhaps the most dangerous trap on the spiritual path, the trap of awakened loneliness, the trap of the trap of thinking that because you see something others don't, you're somehow separate from them. Thomas went through exactly this phase. He stopped returning phone calls from old friends because he felt like they wouldn't understand. He avoided family gatherings because the conversations felt too unconscious. He spent more and more time alone, reading spiritual texts, meditating, convincing himself that this isolation was necessary for his spiritual growth, that he was just in a transition period, and eventually he defined his tribe, other awakened beings who would understand him. And yes, there's some truth to that. Sometimes we do need to step back from certain relationships, certain environments that are genuinely toxic or draining. Sometimes we do need solitude to integrate new perspectives. But Thomas had crossed a line. He wasn't protecting his peace. He was defending his specialness. He wasn't choosing solitude. He was running from connection. He wasn't awakening. He was spiritually bypassing, using his insights about consciousness as a way to avoid the messy, complicated, ego-filled reality of being human among humans. And the loneliness grew, not the rich, full loneliness of solitude, but the empty, aching loneliness of separation. The loneliness of thinking you're different, special, apart. You see, there's a second awakening that needs to happen after the first one. The first awakening is seeing through the illusions, the ego, the stories, the constructed nature of reality. But the second awakening is realizing that seeing through the illusions does make you separate from those who are still in them. It doesn't make you special or superior or different, because here's the truth that's so easy to miss. Consciousness is not personal. Awareness is not yours. The recognition of truth isn't something you possess. It's something that's happening through you, and it's also happening through everyone else, even if they don't consciously recognize it yet. Even if they're deep in their dramas and their stories and their suffering, they are still expressions of the same consciousness that you are. The wave that wakes up to being ocean is not separate from the waves that still think they're just waves. They're all ocean, all of it, always has been. And when you really see this, when you really get it, the loneliness dissolves, not because you find people who think like you, but because you recognize yourself in people who think nothing like you. Glenn Thomas told me about the moment this shifted for him. He was at a family gathering that he'd been dreading, his uncle ranting about politics, his cousin bragging about his new car, his mother worrying about everything, his brother-in-law drunk and loud. All the things that used to trigger they're all so unconscious judgment, but this time something was different. He was watching his uncle rant, and instead of seeing an unconscious person trapped in ego, he saw a human being suffer. He saw the fear underneath the anger. He saw how his uncle's entire identity was built around being right, and how exhausting that must be to constantly defend a position, to constantly be at war with other perspectives. And instead of judgment, Thomas felt compassion, not pity, compassion, a recognition that his uncle was doing the best he could with the level of consciousness available to him. Just like Thomas was, just like everyone is. And then he looked around the room and saw it everywhere. His cousin seeking validation through material success, his mother trying to control uncertainty through worry, his brother-in-law numbing pain through alcohol. All of it was just consciousness playing different roles, wearing different masks, lost in different stories. And Thomas was just another character in the play, wearing the mask of the awakened one, playing the role of the one who sees. And in that recognition, something cracked open. He wasn't separate from these people. He was these people. All different expressions, same source. This is what real awakening looks like. Not the first stage where you wake up to the dream, but the second stage where you wake up to the fact that you're still in the dream, still playing a character, just a slightly more aware character. And from that recognition, you can actually engage with the world again. Not from a place of superiority or separation, but from a place of shared humanity. You can talk about sports without needing everyone to realize that sports are just a distraction from existential emptiness. You can listen to someone's work drama without needing to enlighten them about the illusory nature of ego. You can be with people exactly where they are because you remember where you were. You remember being asleep. You remember the suffering of not knowing you were dreaming. And you recognize that you still don't have it all figured out. You're still learning, still growing, still sometimes caught in your own patterns and stories. The only difference is you're a bit more aware of it when it's happening, a bit quicker to catch yourself, a bit more willing to laugh at the absurdity of it all. And here's what's really interesting. When you stop trying to be the awakened one, when you stop separating yourself from the sleeping world, you become much more effective at actually helping people wake up. Not through preaching or teaching or trying to convince anyone of anything, but simply through your presence, through the quality of your listening, through your ability to be with someone's suffering without needing to fix it or explain it away, through your capacity to see the Buddha nature in everyone, even when they're acting like anything but a Buddha. Because here's the secret, people don't wake up through argument or logic or being told they're asleep. They wake up through resonance, through encountering someone who's genuinely present, genuinely at peace, genuinely comfortable with what is. And that presence is magnetic. It invites. It doesn't push or pull, it just is. And in that isness, something in the other person recognizes itself, maybe not consciously, maybe not right away, but seeds get planted. Questions start to arise. The certainty of their dream starts to waver just a little. And that's all awakening is, a gradual dissolution of certainty, a gentle questioning of what you thought you knew. But let's be honest about the challenges because they're real. Being awake in a sleeping world is not always comfortable. You will have moments of profound loneliness. You will have conversations where you have to bite your tongue, where you see someone creating their own suffering so clearly and you know that saying something won't help, might even make it worse. You will watch people you love make choices that you can see will lead to pain, and you'll have to let them because that's their path, their learning. You will participate in systems and structures, work, government, society, that you can see are based on collective illusions, and you'll have to find a way to operate within them without being consumed by them or completely checking out. You will sometimes feel like an alien, like you're visiting from another planet where people speak a different language. And you will occasionally doubt yourself, wonder if you've actually awakened or if you've just become disconnected, dissociated, spiritually bypassing the real work of being human. These doubts are healthy. They keep you honest. They prevent you from settling into a new identity, a new prison. Mangda, the question becomes, how do you live in the world without being of it? How do you engage with the dream without getting lost in it again? How do you honor your own seeing while also honoring the fact that everyone is exactly where they need to be? And I think the answer is simpler than it seems. You just show up, you just be present, You participate in the play without forgetting it's a play. You care about things without needing them to be different than they are. You work toward change without being attached to outcome. You love people knowing that they're going to disappoint you, hurt you, misunderstand you, because they're human and that's what humans do. And you let them. You let life be life. You let people be people. You let the sleeping world sleep, and you just quietly, gently, compassionately stay awake within it. Not above it, not separate from it, within it. Thomas eventually moved back into relationship with his family, his old friends. But the quality of his relating was completely different. He wasn't trying to wake them up. He wasn't judging their unconsciousness. He wasn't defending his awakening. He was just being with them, laughing at his uncle's terrible jokes, listening to his cousin talk about cars with genuine interest, because why not? What made his spiritual pursuits more valid than his cousin's car enthusiasm? Both were just ways of finding meaning, seeking happiness, trying to figure out this strange experience of being alive. And in that relaxation, in that letting go of spiritual superiority, Thomas found that he wasn't lonely anymore. Not because people suddenly understood him or validated his awakening, but because he stopped needing them too. He was complete as he was. They were complete as they were, and they could just be together in the incompleteness of being human, in the beautiful mess of it all. And here's what I want you to understand, really understand. Awakening doesn't separate you from humanity. It reveals your inseparability from it. The loneliness you feel when you wake up is not a sign that you're doing it right. It's a sign that you've stopped halfway. You've seen through some illusions but created new ones. You've recognized the dream but made yourself the dreamer, special and apart. And there's a further seeing that needs to happen. A recognition that there is no separate awakened you. There's just awakeness happening, consciousness expressing through billions of forms, some more aware of themselves than others, but all equally valid, equally expressions of the whole. When you really get this, you can be with anyone, anywhere, and feel at home. Because home isn't a level of consciousness or a tribe of awakened people. Home is here, now, in this body, this moment, this world, exactly as it is. And yes, you'll still sometimes feel like you're speaking a different language. You'll still have moments where you look around and think, does anyone else see how insane all of this is? You'll still sometimes need to step back, to take space, to be in solitude where you can just be without performing, without translating, without code switching between the awakened and the sleeping worlds. That's okay. That's human. But you won't feel lonely in those moments. You'll feel full of the recognition that even in your aloneness, you're not alone, because the same awareness that's looking out of your eyes is looking out of every pair of eyes. The same consciousness that's reading these words is living every life, dreaming every dream, playing every role. And some roles involve waking up and seeing the play, and other roles involve staying asleep and being immersed in the play, and neither is better or worse. Both are necessary. Both are expressions of the infinite creativity of consciousness experiencing itself. Okay? So what happens when you awaken in a sleeping world? At first, you feel different, special, alone. You create a new identity around your awakening and inadvertently build new walls between yourself and others. But if you keep going, if you don't stop at the first awakening, something else happens. You realize you never left the world. You never became separate from it. You just woke up within it. And from that place, you can love more deeply, serve more freely, live more fully, precisely because you're not taking it so seriously. You're not defending any position. You're not trying to be anyone or prove anything. You're just here, just alive, just witnessing this extraordinary play of consciousness, this cosmic drama where everyone is playing their part perfectly, especially when they think they're doing it wrong. And that, my friend, That is the real gift of awakening, not the insight or the peace or the freedom from suffering, though those come too. The real gift is falling back in love with humanity in all its messy, confused, beautiful unconsciousness, because you recognize it as your own, not separate, never was. Welcome home. You've been here all along, even when you thought you'd traveled somewhere far away.